on behalf of Burncourt Community Council and Burncourt Drama Group to this event here tonight as part of the Decade of Commemoration celebrations. Tonight we recall in the locality those who believed in independence and in their own way, whether it was by praying, propaganda, providing safe houses, taking up arms, advanced that ideal. We welcome Neil Donovan, who has extensively researched this contribution to independence, and I assure you is going to give a most engaging account of local events. We will provide a short reenactment of the raid of McGrath's shop and also a few songs to add to the occasion. But before we start, we would like to wish a speedy recovery to Shawnee Crotty, who is ill at the moment, and he's one of our most loyal members, and we miss you.
Good evening, and And thanks very much, Breda, and the drama group there. It's a great start. I suppose, first of all, I probably know quite a few in the hall at this stage, but I'd say probably a month ago, I'd probably known very few. And you certainly wouldn't have known me, I suppose. As an introduction, I suppose I'm a brother of Eamon Donovan. That's probably who most of you know at this stage. This is my brother John, and Tomas is down there as well somewhere. And I'm the son of Con and Nora Donovan. And I'm sure that you know Con Donovan would have to have an interest in history and republicanism and the fight for Irish freedom, and that's where I got it, naturally enough. I've done a few of these talks in Ireland and Ballyporeen, and but this valley is basically, it's full of fight, I suppose, republicanism, and that's what we're going to explore tonight. It's quite visual, hence the screens, the few songs, and it's broken up with the McGrath's pub and all that. So it moves along. So the Burncourt Company, 6th Battalion Care, Tipperary 3rd Brigade South, 2nd Southern Division. So we'll focus on the Irish Volunteers initially, coming them on, and then the Irish Republican Army. There's quite a bit in that, so I'll just basically give you what's the 6th Battalion? So the company is the smallest sector, the smallest area, which is Burncourt basically, or as you see here, Tincurry, Ballybacon, Graig, Skeenerinka. So I'll just go back there, sorry. The Gary Moore, Ballyporeen, and in Burncourt, which is the G Company, Care Company, and Rahil. So this is the map of the area itself. Sorry, I'll just go back here. We have Burncourt. This is where we are at the moment. So this is all the Care. Sorry, just 1 second. Sorry, 1 second there. So as he's fixing that, so basically the company is the smallest area. The next one up then is the battalion, and this is the Care Battalion, which is all the different companies in all the areas. And basically it's all the surrounding parishes, what you know more or less. From the battalion then it's the brigade, so it's the 3rd Tipperary Brigade. And this is all the battalions, as you can see here, the 8 battalions. So the red one is where we are at the moment. And the battalion, so this is the company areas, and this is the map from the historical archives drawn by one of the local people involved. It started initially in Tincurry, and it kind of moved its way around with Dan Breen, primarily Sean Tracy actually organising to get the companies in order, and they came down. Ballyporeen and Skaheen was all the one at one stage, and they used to meet at the caves. Eventually there was sufficient numbers to split up in Skaheen and Ballyporeen, then followed by Burncourt. And so again, these are areas that are well known to ourselves. Gary Moore is more or less Claheen, Graig, Ballybacon, and again, which is Ardfinnan really, Brehil. So all local, basically, all areas. This then went to the Southern Division, which was basically all these areas here. So that's when they got more organised, and that will make more sense later on. And these are all the divisions in Ireland. So the Southern Division is more or less half of Munster, or more or less all Munster, and a bit of a few other counties. So this becomes more relevant later on. I started at 1913-14, and I want the land, obviously, the more I research the War of Independence, and the more it got to do with land. And in fairness, I think Rose clearly has covered this previously, so I'm not going to revisit that. But there was, again, Burncourt area was, as I said, Strong's for generations struggled with land agitation, and were active throughout the various forms of defiance down the years. And the paper clipping you see on the left there is the Burncourt Landladies League monthly subscription from Miss B.W. Cashin, which is the Burncourt Castle, and contributing. So they had a collection locally, and that was, as Rose tells me, that's when they subversed the other movements that the ladies started up in the league. So again, I think that's fairly well covered by Rose previously, and Lisa as well in the talk gave a good explanation a couple of months back how the land, it's got to do with land. So, and as I said, the more research, the more that becomes the case. So the Irish Volunteers started in 1913 at Owen MacNeil. So very brief, why were there Irish Volunteers? Primarily because Home Rule looked like it was going to happen. And in Ulster, basically, they formed the volunteer movement they were afraid that Ireland would break away from the Union. And in effect, in the Republic, then they formed volunteers itself again, National Irish Volunteers, and subsequently Irish Volunteers. And it was all quite peaceful initially. So again, as you can see, in 1913 it started, but Burncourt wasn't too far behind. It started up in 1914. So again, this follows on. They were quite quick in this area to get on board with national movements. And in May 1914, here you can see they celebrated the passing of the Home Rule Bill. So initially, they were happy enough with the politics of it. It was just coming together. Here inside Mitchelstown, so you see the events in red, they're generally national events. What's in black is what's more local. So this in Mitchelstown, this is 2,000 volunteers getting together. So they were getting a bit more organised. They have no arms or anything like that at this stage. And so this is all where they came together from. You can see from Mitchelstown, Bellanders, Kilbehenny, Ireland. Basically, it's the Galties. And this is what you quite hear a lot in history. The Galtee Battalion were very, very early. And Burncourt had 100 people that went to Mitchelstown and marched. And 2,000 volunteers, basically on a Sunday. It was a national event. It was to be reviewed by Roger Casement. Again, he was obviously became very prominent later on. As it happens, he couldn't make it, and that's the telegram he had to cancel in Mitchelstown. And his Monit took his place, who again became prominent later on in years. So we continue on in 1940. They're now quite organised. And in June, a Sunday, 28th of June 1914, Mitchelstown was after happening, so they moved out to Ballyporeen. And this is a picture from that time, thanks to John Derby, actually. So as you can see, Ballyporeen hasn't changed too much. Actually, you can see when you zoom in, you can see the names. Nelly's is still there, the same. Russell's still the same name up along. Maybe a few less pubs at this day, but still the same primarily. So they marched down the street, and that's the Mitchelstown fife and drum band coming out. And this picture actually is in quite a lot of books, and I'll explain why in a second. So again, Burncourt wasn't found wanting, really. There was up and down to about 1,000 volunteers in the whole village, and they basically get together, they drill and do marching. No arms again, it's to show the authorities that they're organised. They mean business, basically. And Father Keating took the salute in Ballyporeen, the local priest, and Commander Gleeson from Dublin. But it took the whole day, as you can see. Until about 4:30, there was assembly at the bugle, and they basically packed up and went their own ways then. But they came from each area. And this is the picture again up close. And the reason it became prominent was that this person here with the star over him is actually Liam Lynch in 1914. And he, at this stage, he's the same as basically a volunteer. He's actually worked inside Mitchelstown before he actually moved to Fermoy. So this picture, you see quite a lot of books because of that. And this is the main street, Ballyporeen. So one of these people here, so the people in the front. So one of these more than likely is probably John Casey, which was leader of the volunteers, or maybe Sinn Féin at that time. But as you can see, they're all quite well dressed, but they have no arms. So they would have marched up and down the street to take orders from their company commander on the front. And they were doing this for a few hours and then went out to a field in the street. And this what they practiced this in the own locality and then gathered most Sundays in different areas. The one thing to note here is actually Farrell's, you see here on the left. It's the same height as everywhere else. Thanks to the Troubles, it again became a different story, but that's another day's story, I suppose. In 1921, it was burned down by the Black and Tans, as was all the few houses. So we move on, and they moved out to a field. I'm not too sure where it is, about a quarter mile outside Ballyporeen. But again, one of these lines is going to be Burncourt, basically. Skeheenarinka, Ballyporeen, and all the different companies. So it took a turn in September 1914. Again, the red event you see here in Wooden Bridge. John Redmond, World War I, was becoming to prominence, and he more or less said he was obviously the leader at the time and had quite a command in Ireland. And Home Rule was looking fairly likely in some respects. Politics in their mind was working. And John Redmond more or less said if we support the World War I, that we'll get paid a benefit down the line. And this is him here on Wooden Bridge making that famous speech, basically a World War I recruitment speech. And again, you can see this is on the left is a typical foot drill with volunteers. They have hurleys and sticks. They don't have guns at that stage. And it's no different here. So the volunteers, John Redmond things, that was quite controversial, as you can imagine, because the country was fairly quiet at the time, and quite a lot, if you can see here from the split, 100,000 went to Redmond and joined the National Volunteers, and quite a lot of these went and fought in the First World War. And again, some people from the locality and the neighbouring parishes, but the vast majority followed the Redmondites and the political way, but 100,000, along with McNeill, they resisted. And now that figure is probably conservative for the country, to be honest. And they remained in Ireland, and they didn't want to take part. In Burncourt, the vast majority took this side of it. They went with and became the Irish Volunteers, in effect. So what you see down here, they took. Moving on, that obviously had quite a devastating effect. It more or less finished the volunteers, really. So they were meeting twice a week, drilling, but they were just disheartened. And it more or less, while they went with the Republican side, for want of a better word, they didn't for a while get back together. And for 1914, you don't hear anything in 1915. It just reverts back to politics, I suppose. 1916, and typically around here, there wasn't much happened, really, to be honest. They were organised, the volunteers. They got the command. They also got the counter-command to step down. But there is two connections not too far from here. One in Claheen, which is Thomas Clack's mother, Mary Palmer, was born and married in Claheen in 1927. And if you pass the main street, there's a plaque outside the house unveiled a couple of years back, and that's his father, in Sergeant James Clack, who's in the military. Ironically, in Ballypreen, something similar. Eamon Kent's father was born just outside Linnacunna on the way to Tarlin, just up to the right there. And his father was James Kent, was an RSC officer in Ballypreen. And the Kent land is still there. The field is still known as Kent's. And even, I suppose I'm terrible to say, my young days, now at this stage, which that's the age I am, I remember the Kents, and that was talked about. And this is the field here. You can photo engraved. You can actually see the ruins of the house, and it's in the ownership of the Careys up there in Linnacunna at this present moment. And again, this is James Kent, RSC. He ended up in Galway, hence Eamon Kent was born in Galway. So there are the two local connections. There was a little bit of activity around. Mainly, I think, as Thomas Ryan was arrested going through Ballypreen with a message for Christy Ryan and Mitchelstown. But that was about it, really. The rest of them stood down. They were ready to fight, as they said, but they stood down. So after 1916, the violence seems to have agitated them again. It reawakened them in effect. So again, you see the weekly parade starting up again with the drilling. Again, not so many guns at this, no guns at all, in fact. And Sinn Féin in Tipperary, South Tip are starting to get organised in Bansha. And again, there's representatives. Pat Brazelfield Corn was represented to represent the local Claheen, Ballypreen's Burncourt area. And he became vice president. So they had no guns, but that didn't really stop them. They started to make pikes. Maybe reminiscent of Wexford. They started to make pikes in the local forges, and in quite a few cases made up makeshift forges up the mountains. The pikes you see here in front of you actually were made, I would say, possibly within a mile of this place. The person that gave them to me doesn't want to reveal it, which is fair enough, but they're actually made quite local. In Ireland, Ballypreen and all their surrounding, they made likewise. They had intended putting handles on these, but as you can see, they never got to that because they started to raid for guns. And in Burncourt in 1918, in the reports, they got 10 single-barrel shotguns and 2 double-barrel shotguns collected locally. And more or less from the right here, the farmers were quite sympathetic, mainly farmers, they were quite sympathetic. Some weren't so sympathetic, and they got a little bit violent, but they got the guns nonetheless. But more or less, the farmers more or less left the guns for them. So again, Sinn Féin is rising at this stage in Burncourt, and you can see here there's meetings in Tincurry with a contingent from Burncourt and a fife and drum band accompanied. So again, I've been getting pictures down the last couple of weeks with the fife and drum band continuing right up into the 50s. So back in 1918, there was a fife and drum band locally. In Clare in 1918 again, there was an anti-conscription meeting and Burncourt representatives present. And all these clips at the bottom here, give you the detail of this. But again, it's quite boring to read through it, to be honest, so I'll just give you the summarised version. Again, June 1918, Claheen Sinn Féin meeting. And then 17th of August 1918 in Burncourt, a Sinn Féin meeting in Burncourt, which was quite well attended when you read the... So again, they're getting, basically after, I suppose, the First World War, they're getting back organised after 1916. Locally, there was quite a bit of controversy. This is quite in the papers for quite a number of weeks, in that the Claheen Board of Guardians, obviously, which would have held quite a lot of sway, but they were getting elected. The Sinn Féin were getting members, they're getting organised, they were getting elected, and I think it's the Board of Guardians, they wouldn't condemn the Republic of the movement for those prisoners elected, or from 1916 that were in Frognock, whatever, and they were putting forward motions to condemn the government, but they wouldn't, and the Board of Guardians wouldn't, and again, they organised, and it actually seemed to centre around Burncourt. So basically, the ratepayers delegates, and that was their function. They were, I suppose, getting organised in politically. And you can see the names here again, they become quite frequent throughout. The delegates were Thomas Gorman, John Creed, James Slattery, Thomas Fitzgerald, and Timothy O'Donoghue from Burncourt. In Kilcorn, you had Eamon McGrath, Bob Keaton, Michael Burke. And in Coolagarn Row, Dennis McGrath, and Jay Sheely. So again, these names will appear and appear. Okay. Sorry, I've got ahead of myself there slightly. It's a good job of a floor manager here. And sorry, what I should have done is, as we go through it, 1916, there'll be a song from Grace. So I do apologise, but I can see it's anxious and ready to go there. So I'll hand you over to Grace. I think you'll all agree, I might have been 2 years past 1916, but to 1918, but it was well worth the wait. Excellent. So again, I suppose from songs like this, as I said, it reactivated 1916, 1918. But again, they took, I suppose, the political route to some degree. And again, the ratepayers, it didn't stop, it kept going. And again, I suppose I'll just read out an excerpt from this here. And again, you can see what it means to land and revolution and around locally. So this is, again, the Burncourt Convention it was. They all met up here, and all the ratepayers to voice their anger, I suppose. For some time, we have noted that union charges have increased more than this in any other rural district. Apart from general mismanagement of the business, to which they ought to confine themselves, than national sentiment. The rejection of a resolution condemning the arrest of Irish leaders. It is necessary that every public board should speak out fearlessly the voice of the people, not their own chicken-hearted sentiments. They should resign their position immediately. And this was signed by Bartholomew Corbett and John Geary Burncourt, Richard English and Edward Morrissey Kilcorn. And again, the delegates, the same names, Burncourt, Thomas O'Gorman, James Statry, John Creed, Timothy O'Donoghue. So again, they were quite, there's no mincing of words there, really, to be honest. They're not happy with the politicians locally. This is absolutely nothing to do with the presentation, but I just came across in the paper. I said I'd leave it in there. It obviously caught my eye. In 1918, in August 1918, a big heading, a missing half barrel. And I'll read the first clip. It's too good to let out. The neighbourhood of Burncourt had a sensation all of its own these days. It concerns a half barrel of stout which has disappeared as completely as if the earth had swallowed it. Though there is strong reason to presume that the swallowing was done, not by the kindly earth, but 8 of more thirsty human inhabitants. And it's not a million miles off the volunteers. They were getting organised, I think. But they basically organised a fake wedding. They got Ryan's to get a couple of barrels out, and in transit they ambushed the barrels. And you can, if you have time, you can go back to 1988 and find out who was involved. But it's quite an interesting one. So I think this is we can claim it as part of the Republican movement. 4th of December 1918, Sinn Féin meeting again. So again here you can see, this is basically the election. Up to now, John Redmond's party have more or less ruled the roost in Ireland and in Westminster. And they firmly believed they were going to get home rule after, I suppose, the First World War. But it wasn't, it was still, naturally, that subsided. And the good British politicians, as we see today, were, fobbing them off, for want of a better word, really. And the people of Burncourt certainly weren't happy, and nationally. So the meeting was, William Fogarty, MCC, presided. PJ Maloney was the candidate. Professor Sam Fahy spoke, and Frank O'Mara from Cork spoke. So as you can see here, Sinn Féin headquarters is quite a, it's quite a decent itinerary, and to go around to all the areas. And this is an account of the one in Burncourt. It was after 9:30 Mass in Burncourt. The local fife and drum band and volunteers marched to the place of meeting, a field convenient to the village. So again, unfortunately, I don't have a picture of the fife and drum band from that time, but I do have pictures of the ones 1956, a couple of pictures. And I see Mick Fox there as one of the participants, and I think I see him here in the back, if I remember rightly. And Tim Downing seems to be the main. So I'd imagine Tim was probably carrying on from the original band by the looks of it, to be honest. So again, it's good to see that tradition carrying on. So the election, basically, Sinn Féin swept the boards, as you can see from the map here. So the light green would have been Redmond's party, and you can see a little bit in Waterford here, his home constituency. But the rest was Sinn Féin, they swept it. PJ Maloney, who was elected Sinn Féin for Tipperary, the TD. So again, if you looked at the map in the previous election, it would have been the light green, and Sinn Féin would have been minimal. So the only thing of note, that side, there was quite a lot of action note, and they would have gone down to, I think even there was a by-election in Waterford, and local people went down there. They didn't win it, as it happens, but there was a precursor to this. But it was get quite, the Waterford pig buyers, a lot of them came back with a lot of scrapes. It was quite violent. Locally, Maurice McGrath recalls in his account that along with 4 volunteers, they canvassed at the booth for Sinn Féin. There was a local, the Mad Sergeant, he called him, and he called on the military to remove the volunteers. He got no joy, and later on he resigned in disgust. So that was, Maurice recalls that account. In effect, that's the politics over, really. Because in early January, and again, these are national events, the first meeting of the Dáil Éireann, as I'm sure all well aware of this, in January 1919, and on the same day, Sullihead Beg, the ambush. So as we've been seeing along, it kind of switched from politics to violence, politics. So this is in effect, the start of the War of Independence. I think they've had enough politics down the years, and Burncourt was lacking in that respect. So Burncourt had quite a bit to do with the aftermath of Sullihead Beg. So in effect, the ambush, the main actors, Dan Breen, I should say, Sean Tracy, Sean Hogan, obviously Seamus Robinson and the Dwyers are all involved. They went different ways. But these three came down more or less along by the railway track, I think, over the Galties, and ended up through Care, and they ended up in what Marion Tobin's in Tincurry House, which was, to be honest, you could do a night on Tincurry House by itself on Marion Tobin. It was a safe house, and it's well recorded in Dan Breen's book. They had intended, I think Ned McGrath then was more or less the local organiser. They were to bring him to Thomas Ryan's in Ballyluby, but they had got a tip off, and thankfully, because it was raided the morning after. So in effect, they went up to Thomas Butler with Ned McGrath, and ultimately stayed in Burncourt Castle with Thomas and Bridget O'Gorman. From there, they were taken. It's in the book it's Bala, but I believe it's O'Brien's of Bahina to Kilbenny. And ultimately, they wanted to get to Christy Ryan. So they stayed a couple of nights in this area, but they kept on the move. And from Mitchtown, they went on towards Limerick. But again, you can just imagine the excitement in Burncourt the morning after with these three lads in the locality. So again, the formation of the Burncourt IRA around February 19. So the volunteers are there the whole time, but they're just more or less becoming the IRA really. And this is William Cleary Lingar's military pension option extract, I should say. So here, now the military archives, there's a lot of it online. William does medal files and pension files. And I'll explain after people who want to understand a bit more. The pension files are the real extensive documents. And they're all online. William Cleary is the only one around Burncourt at the moment. They're putting about 1,000 every 6 months up online. But it's seriously interesting. And the other letters back up, this is John Pius Casey, basically saying, vouching for William Cleary. And that while he was at the very start, he was and it gives quite a detail. The form itself is very detailed. The medals, I think to qualify for a medal, they had to have 3 months service up to the truce. And those files you can actually go up and view, and I'd have some of those later. But again, if someone wants to know how to get these online, give me a shout after. They're quite good. So just to finish off on the Sullihead Beg then, Jack Tobin was the one that drove him up from Gorman's basically to Mitchtown via Kilbenny and probably Donkey and Cart. And in fact, this is Dan Breen. And local folklore has it, this is up at Butler's. This is in Dan Breen's book, My Fight for Irish Freedom, where he gives quite a detailed account of the welcome he got in Burncourt and the warmth he had towards it. So the actions continued locally and nationally. Again, in Ballybreen in June 1919, there was an Air Draocht. An Air Draocht is nearly what we're having here tonight, to be honest, music, poetry, song and dance. And that was, along with the politics, the GA was quite prominent at this stage. So an Air Draocht is basically music, song and dance, national. And that was, in effect, that was where they met for the volunteers as well. That was their way of meeting. And again, as they were getting more organised, they met quite big ones, and in this case in Ballybreen. And again, the Burncourt Fife and Drum Band rendered a first-class programme of music, as recalled in the account here. So there were speeches, they played hurling, they played camogie, and it was, in effect, a way of organising locally, to be honest. In September 1917, not too far away, in Fermoy, the Wesleyan Raid, which is Liam Lynch with the Cork Brigade, North Cork, and the Fermoy Brigade, I suppose, a battalion. And that was, they captured 15 rifles in effect, but there was one casualty, and that led to the burning of Fermoy, I suppose. And other folklore led to the Sniper Lundigan's nickname as well from that event, which I'm sure is recalled locally. Burncourt activities. So again, the country is starting to agitate, and Burncourt is as well. And again, we come back to the land. In Galtee Castle, 1920, Abel Buckley settles land dispute via Sinn Féin arbitration. And again, this was very important for the IRA and Sinn Féin, that they were the ones doing this. The arbitration, you can imagine to the authorities, seeing this in the national press. So now they're taking over. In the Galtee Mountains, 1920, an IRA warning letter. Clear sheep of Galtee Mountain, as British law no longer exists in this country. The Galtee Mountains IRA warning letter again. Cattle herding under penalty of death. And in Claheen, 4,500 attended Sinn Féin meeting for election candidate, again 1920. Again, a national event in Fermoy, General Lucas was captured, and which led to a lot of raids around locally in the whole area. Again, back to Burncourt in August 1921. They're starting, the local volunteers, they're starting to do more actions locally. In this case, they're cutting the telegraph poles, again, just to disrupt the authority of the British and their everyday working. And likewise here in Care, the Bellarine Care telegraph poles were actually cut in Burncourt. And again, these are all the reports or telegrams back to Care, to Cork, and report to Dublin on the same. So the rural elections then, as we mentioned there earlier, in Care there was 6 vacancies, and the people that stood as Richard English, in Claheen, Dennis McGrath, and John Flynn from Ballyshean. And this election was quite remarkable, really, in that Marion Tobin, she was elected into Care. There was 4 Sinn Féiners were returned, including Marion Tobin, the first female councillor. So again, it was quite remarkable, really. So Sinn Féin have now taken the politics locally as well. This Rahil RSE Barracks and Scart Rifle Range, you read this in quite a few books, and it's a bit confusing, to be honest. My belief is they're all the one. The intent was Ernie O'Malley, Sean Tracy and Michael Landrigan, they were getting the Burncourt and Tincurry volunteers to go up and break up the Scart Rifle Range. It was a soft target, so that was fine. They were waiting in Tincurry. There was no sign of the party. So they decided they should have been there. They were quite strict on time. So they went out, and basically what had happened was the volunteers had assembled. They were coming down to meet at the point, but they had been intercepted by a military convoy, and they'd all been arrested and chained together, handcuffed together. The British assumed, because it was near Rahil Barracks, that they were going to raid Rahil Barracks. They were convinced of it. They had them all handcuffed together. This is the official report here, which is quite detailed. And this would have been done by Potter, actually, as it happens. It became obviously different in a couple of months' time, I suppose, a year's time, became quite prominent. But so then Tracy and the lads, they were getting a bit agitated, so they went out to see, where are the lads? What's the hell? They should be here at this stage. And they heard the soldier song being sung in the distance. It was actually the military and RSE singing it to mock the lads they had captured, and they were bringing them into Care in the handcuffs. So the 3 lads basically got close enough and started firing, just let a few shots off. They didn't actually shoot anyone. They just wanted to create confusion, and in the confusion, the volunteers all scattered. And of the ones they only retained 2. But you can see this is what they had, all the volunteers. They captured 7, but this is what the British captured: 7 bicycles, 1 single barrel shotgun, 12 rounds of shotgun cartridge, 1 automatic pistol, and a spade. So they exactly had the whole pile of arms, really, to be honest. That's what they had gone breaking up. So, and that's true nationally. In fact, they probably had more arms here than more the rest of the country. So the day after, they raided Thomas Gorman and Burncourt Castle. So they only had got 2. They basically went around the whole of this area and checked your arms to see had you any marks for handcuffs. And that's what they did the morning after the British came out and raided constantly. They came to Thomas Gorman and Burncourt Castle, and inside there was 4 lads in the room. They arrested Patrick Regan because in one of the bedrooms there was a flag with the wording Burncourt Sinn Féin Club. We'd love to have to see that flag now if it's around, but I'm sure it's probably well gone. And they brought him to Care Barracks. And this is Potter's signature here down the bottom, down here. he's the one reading the report. And when you read the report, it's actually quite fair. He says they didn't recognise Patrick Regan inside the military barracks in Care, but still they contrived to. He wasn't even part of that night before, but he was arrested for that. They said he had a mark on his hand, basically. So they arrested a couple of people in the locality for that very for the raid in Rahil Barracks. Again, it's 1920. From my generally, they were flying planes over around this area to see what the activity was in March 1921 to summer 1921. And again, 12:45, nothing to report. So the plane flight is quite low. Sometimes they give out leaflets, actually. So again, this came from Fermoy, did all the rounds, and went back to Fermoy. So they were flying all along up along this valley, basically, to see, could they see, I suppose, the groups of volunteers. It's getting a bit more serious now that they're having some successes, but likewise, I suppose the authorities are having some successes as well. And the flying columns are formed. Initially, first around the Galtee, around the Limerick side, I should say, the east side, and Cork and Tip followed suit quite quickly. The first 3rd Tipperary Brigade was the Dinny Lacey column. And again, that was, I suppose, Dan Breen and Tracy would have all been involved in that. But not too long after, Tracy was shot in Dublin, in Talbot Street, which was a serious loss, because Sean Tracy would have been the main organiser down here, or he was the one that came down and made him organise, for want of a better word, got Ned McGrath to come out, and the Tobins and all, and made him organise locally. So he was a serious loss. And it seemed to knock him for a bit in Tipperary, to be honest. But by November then they had a second column, which was Sean Hogan, which is more or less what in this area. Again, just to put it in context, Kilmichael happens this November. So it's getting quite serious. And in Kiltankin, they're starting to take the bikes. The militaries are taking any bikes they can, again, to just try and stop them. So adjacent here in Skinrinka column, these are the members that were in Sean Hogan's. It started off with Maurice McGrath and Jack Nagle, and they just basically went around areas. They asked for the best of the people. Generally, there was a lot of uptakers, and there was a hardcore. And then some people in their locality they would join up. So, for example, in Skaheen, Johnny Carney was the company captain right throughout the whole period, and he would have organised the whole lot locally. So they would come into to Johnny's area basically, and more or less handpick the people. Now, again, why these people? These are all on the run basically at this stage for one reason or another. They didn't want to take people that were quite locally if they weren't suspected. That's the last people they took. They took people that were on the run that couldn't return home. The likes of maybe Johnny Carney, John Casey, they wanted them to stay locally because that was critical to the organisation. They were and they're coming them on. They were the backbone to getting the intelligence to make this happen. So again, you see Maurice McGrath, Ned Mulcahy, Bill Mulcahy, then there's the Sniper Lundigan, Gabriel McGrath, Chris Conway, William O'Brien, Michael Fogarty, Michael Regan, James Regan, and David Fitzgerald. Now this column, even though it's in 30 Brigade number 2 ASU, it's known as the Sean Hogan Flying Column. And there's quite a few Burncourt connections in there. The people from Burncourt itself then, and again, they would come locally to Tim Mulcahy, William Cleary, or Bill Cleary, and James Butler. Again, they were in the column. So these are full-time on their own. Now, that's not to say the locals would have guarded them when they came, they housed them. The column corps was generally about 40, or at times 25, but 40 moving around. And they would have supplemented by local. So locally, they would have guarded them, they would have fed them, they would have clothed them. And that's why the coming them on were, again, key to the success of the activities. Burncourt seems to have been plagued by raids from the military, mainly, I suppose from Care and Claheen, very much, way more so than further on in the valley, really. And this is, even when you read this here, this is in this October 1920, a company of Lanciers, for the 6th time, carried out a most minute search of the residence of Mr. O'Gorman, Burncourt Castle, and also the residence of Mr. McGrath, MCC merchant, and Mr. J. Creed, creamy manager. No arms or ammunition or incriminating documents were found. They subsequently searched the house of Mr. E. Fox in Vinogue, and nothing of any political import was discovered. So again, this is the 6th time in quite early in the conflict. And again, it's Patrick McGrath, John Creed, and Edmund Fox. As it happens, their information was quite good, to be honest. They knew where to search. The hunger strikes, again, national importance, Mick Fitzgerald, after the Wesleyan raid, as it happens, he died initially, first in October 1920, and Terence McSweeney. And again, in October 1920. And this seemed to incite more, and as you can see, as I said, the Tipperary column was formed, and Kilmichael ambush is around this time again, just a month later. So it's getting quite serious. The Burncourt military raids then, as I said, it was mainly Gaffney, Lieutenant Gaffney and Jones. They were, and they came, I suppose there was some, for example, McGrath's pub wouldn't sell any goods to the RIC, and that they pickpointed that one. There was some premises that did, and they basically raided them quite constantly. And the British military raided Burncourt constantly, said, targeted the village on numerous occasions during October 1920. And Jack Casey, Mick Casey and Bill Butler, these were all taken out in bet, given quite a beating really. They were taken out of their beds primarily at night time and threatened to be shot and subsequently beaten by the military. And this picture here is actually the military in Ireland doing something similar. That's what they looked at the time. 30 November 1920 is leading up to the military raid. And this, probably going to the map, and this is the route they took. They were determined to, I suppose, not in some respect take no prisoners this night. A captain from Fethard came out and he was met by Gaffney and Jones. They were the ones doing the rounds previously. Some of them were masked. They came quite late, about midnight, up from Ballyporeen. The first stop was Edmund and Lizzie Fox in Kilvinogue. And I'll go into a bit of detail what they had done there. Basically then went to Pat McGrath's in Cargal. Primarily looking for Patrick, but he wasn't there. But they still terrorised the father, mother, or grandparents. And then moved on to McGrath's shop. And once they did their horrible deed there, they went back to Burncourt. This is all around midnight, 1 o'clock, late in the night. So the first place they stopped was Edmund and Lizzie Fox's farm in Kilvinogue. Edmund was 67 and Lizzie was 52 at the time. They were actually looking for Pat Fox, who was a member of the Burncourt Company. So their intelligence was correct. And this is the detail here of the compensation claim in 1921. So again, this Edmund and Lizzie. And what did they do? They basically were partially masked. They were led by Gaffney and Jones, they said. And they questioned Pat Fox. They did fire shots and asked if he was intimidating loyalists. Basically, was he one of the ones that were going up intimidating the shops that were selling to the RIC and different things and taking guns, shotguns. He denied involvement. He was asked if he was a Sinn Féiner and now an IRA member. He confirmed he was a member of both. That's quite remarkable, really, that bravery at that stage. Because these lads weren't nice people, really. But as it turned out, they beat him quite badly and told him to resign membership or suffer consequences. They did actually threaten to burn the house, but instead they burnt hay barns. 2 hay barns, the dairy, the fowl house. And you can see, so what you're seeing here on the right is the compensation claim. So £387 of old money in the hay barn. That was the hay barn itself, 257 for another hay barn. The dairy was 158. The fowl house, £18, 10 shillings. So the hay, I was up till I make this, and this was his probably favourite part of this. Of the hay, they burnt 72 tonnes of old hay. The old hay being worth £9, 10 shillings. And they burnt 20 tonnes of new hay, £8, 10 shillings. So the old hay was remarkably hit 72 tonnes of the old and 20 tonnes of new. And there was a £1 difference. So remarkable, really. But as you can imagine, it's quite devastating. And 18 tonnes of straw, which was only worth £6, 10 shillings. But and a lot in the volunteers, you see the farmers helping locally, harvesting when they're in jail and prison, things like that. And they would have done the same here. But this was quite devastating. He had to sell, you see here, he got £160 compensation for the cows. He had to sell 16 of 24. Bear in mind, this is November, so there's no time for any more harvesting. He had to sell the cows because he had no hay to feed. And again, the farmers locally, the hay was being similar as well. They also broke house delf and furniture in the house. So again, that was their first stop in this locality that night. They moved on to Pat and Bridget McGrath in Cargal. Again, Patrick was 78 and Bridget was 63 at this stage. And they were again looking for Pat, but he wasn't there. He was actually in Burncourt. Bridget was there, the wife and the family and the kids. And again, the same scenario, masked men. They asked if someone saw him who she wasn't. They tried to burn the house down, which they actually didn't. So they turned all the occupants out onto the road in November, and they were barely clad, including the vet's wife and children. And they threatened to shoot them again out on the road. And then they said they were going in to burn the house. As it happens, they didn't. But again, they damaged quite a lot of the house, and they actually broke the windows to gain entry to the house. Because again, this was maybe about 12:30 at night. So they got to Burncourt, to the McGrath's shop and public house. So on that night, there was Patrick McGrath and Morris McGrath, and their nephew Jimmy, who was Pat's son. Well, sorry, I suppose Morris's nephew Jimmy. Again, the same raiding party. And this is Patrick here, Morris, and Jimmy McGrath, obviously a bit older. And I think from reading the accounts, the captain that came from Fethard, I presume he has been promised quite a rewarding night from their terms, that they'd be captures, they'd get documents. At this rate, he was getting quite frustrated. They were not having any successes. This is McGrath's pub. Thanks to Breda for the pictures here. You'll see Roger and quite a few of them. So again, the building is probably similar to what this is. This is inside the pub, I think, more from that time. And the outside of the building. So again, quite a decent premises. And they had quite a big egg collection going to Dublin. That was the main lot of the business, a shop and a pub, and quite a few other things. So, so it was quite a successful business, really, especially the egg side of it. But again, they'd been constantly raided at this stage. And my cue right this time, we'll do the reenactment. So at this stage, they've terrorised the Foxes, the McGraths up along, and they're going to be in action at this stage. So I'll hand you over to the drama group there. We'll just have to take down the screen first to give you a bit, we'll give you a small bit of a break. All this.
Okay. The McGrath brothers, Morris and Patrick, along with their nephew Jimmy, are asleep above the shop. Their 3 names are listed on the back of the door, as is the requirement for an area under martial law. The RIC, led by Lieutenants Gaffney and Jones, along with the captain from Feathered, raid the premises at approximately 1:30 in the middle of the night.
Right. Lieutenant Gaffney, where are we now? Whose property is this?
We have come from Skaheen-Rinka. This is Burncourt village, Captain. And all along here is the notorious Fenian country.
Very well, but whose property is this?
This is McGrath's shop. Earlier in our raids, we raided the home place in Capagal, and we believe they're seriously involved in the Sinn Féin and rebel movement around here.
Lieutenant Jones and Gaffney, as you are well aware, I left Feathered Barracks at 5 o'clock today with the promise of capturing some rebels, and more importantly, some of the miserable arms that they hold. So far, you've put me on a merry-go-round in the middle of the night, raiding Cloheen, Ballyporeen, and whatever the blasted name of that place was. Where are we again?
This is Burncourt, Captain. And let me explain.
Lieutenants, no, let me explain. This night better be productive, and my report to Care Barracks will not make good reading on both your behalves. Understood?
Understood, Captain.
Understood, Captain. No, you heard the Captain. These Burncourt lads have had it their own way long enough. And we see what happened in Salahead Bay. Go on, get back in the house, lads, quick.
Better open the doors. Force open the doors.
What's the code?
Open up, let me in. Oh, wait, fix the doors. Open immediately, and the doors left.
Hold your horse, let me download it.
Lieutenant Gaffney, search every room. Bring all the occupants to me in once here. Lieutenant Jones, take 3 officers. Search every room, every outhouse. Bring me anything connected with this bloody rebellion. Anything. Officer, check the list of occupants in the back of the front door.
Yes, sir.
Do you want me to read them for you, sir?
Of course.
3 males listed. Morris McGrath, Patrick McGrath, and Jimmy McGrath. Do you want
Give me
to
the
read,
list.
sir?
Lieutenant Gaffney, who have we here?
McGrath, tell the captain your name, home address and occupation.
What's this about? So we were all late.
McGrath, tell the captain what I asked you.
You know well my name, but you read the shop
McGrath,
before.
give you one more warning.
For no good reason.
Give you one more warning. Tell him what I asked, all right?
Morris McGrath, Cahergal, and Burncourt shopkeeper.
I see we have a Fenian pup here. He's the one involved in all the hassle around here. So he is. Blackguard.
I'm sure
And who's this person?
And the boy. I'm Patrick McGrath. McGrath from Cahergal, and I'm a farmer.
And I guarantee you he's involved in it as well. Is his name on the list?
It is. And who's the boy?
Leave him alone. He's our neighbour, Jimmy.
Let
He's
him-
here helping us out in the shop.
Let him speak for himself. Little boy, come on, tell the captain what's your name.
My name is Jimmy McGrath from across the road.
Officer, take the boy to his room and lock the door. Lieutenant, did you check how many beds were warm?
Yes, I did. There were all the beds were cold except the 3. There were only 3 occupants, Captain.
Okay. If you think that these bastards are involved in the local troubles, take them to the inside room. Get as much information as possible. Okay? You said that Tracy, Hogan, Breen and Robinson were through here, and that some of these locals were involved in that rifle range raid. Get the details of what's planned. I want answers. Go! What have you found?
Nothing much, Captain.
What do you mean, nothing much? You tell me that some of these locals were involved in local troubles, and you found nothing? I see some of your lot found it beer easy enough. I think that's what you bloody lot want. When the king's soldiers sat acting like it. Search again and spare nothing. There has to be something. This night better be worthwhile. Lieutenant Gaffney, have these 2 ruffians confessed to their murderous ways?
Nothing, Captain. Nothing. Got nothing from it.
Nothing. Get me out of here. We've spent the last 2 hours doing nothing. Wasting our time. Bring me straight back to Care Barracks. Enough of this nonsense.
Castle at 3 a.m. Mrs. Bridget O'Gorman is in the kitchen, and in comes Jim Mulcahy, Jack Tobin, and Joanna Burkler.
Mrs. O'Gorman, I managed to get Jim Mulcahy and Jack Tobin. Pius Casey and Richard Peters weren't home.
Good night, ma'am.
Good night, ma'am.
Well done, Johanna. Sit down there and take a rest, sure. You must be exhausted. You've been on the go for the last half hour. Right, lads. I was awoke this morning by a terrible burst of fire altogether. It was about 3 o'clock, and it was coming from the road outside. It was heading from Burncourt down into Claheen, I'd say. It was the Tens, firing from the military lorry. When I looked out, they were singing and roaring and drinking. Right, lads. You better get down to the village and see if everything was all right. Right, ma'am. Johanna, you head down as well and come back as quick as you can with all the news.
McGrath's shop. The front door. It's all broken up. It's bits all across the street. And Pat and Mara, oh my God, they're in a terrible state. Oh. They're unconscious. They look like they're actually dead.
Oh my God. Oh, the Lord save us.
Oh, but Jack did check, and they're alive, but only just only just. What do we do if they come back? There's all the bitch. What do we do to us all?
Right, listen, Johanna. Listen, will you? Now, you get our pony and trap, and you head over to McGrath's, and get Jack and Jim to get the lads up to the McGrath's place in Carrigal. I'll get on to Ellen Luddy, and I'll get her to get Dr. Walsh and meet him up there. And sure, if things are that bad, I'll have to get the priest as well. Go on now, and don't delay. It's better to get the boys out of Burncourt tonight.
I go, ma'am. Oh my God, help us all. God, help us all.
What has the place come to? What's going to happen to my poor Tom? John Creed, Dennis McGrath, Morris Walsh, and young Jim Slattery above in the camps. God help us all.
No, they're right, they're right.
So as you can see, it was quite violent. I mean, they meant business, the military that night. They left a trail of destruction really behind them. I mean, they ruined the Fox's livelihood, and the McGraths, they broke up their premises, but they beat particularly Patrick McGrath quite badly. The aftermath, he had to be taken. They didn't realise that Carrigal, the home place, had been raided, but they took him up there, and they had to basically get him into Claheen Hospital, and they kept him there for a number of days. But he was quite serious. Morris went back to the shop, but he was still suffering from head injuries. And in the newspapers, you see the year after, you see the claim from Patrick, and it's for personal damage and property damage. The compensation claim was 2,616, and that was just for property. And it went on from April and May, but eventually the court came back, and they were asking the Crown Forces were they implicated in the case, and obviously they were. So there's still British military rule here. They're looking for compensation off the British. It's not the treaties down the road. And Pat basically in the court case said they immigrated to Australia. And to be honest, when I looked at this first, I thought that was just to get him out, that they didn't want to find him, the British. Because they came back to the pub the morning after, would you believe it, to Morris and Gaffney and Jones, and said, what happened here? As if, And I think Jim Mulcahy was there, and he basically hunted him out of the place. Because Morris was still in out of consciousness, and whereas Pat was in a lot worse state. So this is Pat's passport here. So he did actually go to Australia. He ultimately ended up in America, and obviously came back later on. Again, we move on. Something quite local here, Cal's Cross incident in February 1921. I suppose maybe before I go on to that, it had, I suppose, so Gaffney and Jones were intimidating locally, and the column and the local company, they had enough of it basically. And they went to one of the premises, they got the business in Burncourt, and they did the same thing within a week or two. They raided the place, and they damaged quite a bit of it, the column and the local company, and that was a compensation claim later on. And so basically the people who were supplying the British, they damaged their business, and in effect that actually stopped the raiding of the military to some degree, that violence. Cal's Cross, which is just up to, past the caves here. Again, this is the flying column, and this is just to give you a view of what the flying column. So the flying column are moving around the area, primarily the foot of the Galties, raiding RSE barracks in Outfinnan, Ballypreen, and different places. But they use the Galties quite a lot in Burncourt and Skaheen as their home base. So the column, as I said, sometimes it's 40, but primarily about 25. They'd come into the area, and they'd have a centre, and the headquarters in Skaheen, it was Kiley's. But on this occasion, there were, I think, at Cahill's. So there'd be 2 or 3 staying Cahill's, and every house around about 2 or 3. And the local scouts didn't be around the place to mind them. And they'd have 2 layers of scouts, one quite local to the house and one further away, just to give the warnings. And that's exactly what was happening on this night. So it was Sean Hogan's flying column. Mike Fogarty here, you'll see in a minute, became quite prominent in it. He was on scout duty, even though he's in the flying column. Mike was also known as Graham, as it happens. So as I said, the column was billeted locally. He was at Cal's Cross on scout duty, and he basically coming from Burncourt. I suppose this is Cal's Cross here. From this direction, so I'd imagine he was more or less scouting here on the crossroads in the ditch. That was at night time, so he wouldn't see much. And he heard people coming up along the road, and as he did, he asked halt who was there, and the reply came back, police. And at first he thought that it was his own lads having a joke. And as it happens, one of his neighbours, so Fogarty is just up past Cahill's, one of his neighbours who wasn't involved in the volunteer movement was with him, and they were just chatting away the night. And eventually he asked again who was there, and the second reply came back, police. So obviously he knew it was business this time. As it happens, there was 8 RSE people coming out from Burncourt in file order, and with a double barrel, he left a double barrel shot off basically at the police, and he injured one of them, and then took off up this road. Bear in mind that some of the column are staying in Cahill's, as are all houses up along, and he left off 2 more shots here to warn, they didn't actually fire at the RSE at this stage, he fired in the air just to warn the flying column. Strangely, Cahill's didn't hear it, but they heard it further up in in Burncourt and Skaheen, and they all came about. But again, you can imagine at 1 o'clock at night it was morning time before they got together. They went to the rendezvous point. They don't actually go to this point, they go to where the headquarters is. This is the reports from the military and the telegrams, and these are all in the public records office in London. And they actually put it down as Coolintala. They didn't know quite exactly where it was. The strange thing about it was there's actually Constable Arthur O'Brien was shot, and he was quite badly injured. He took a claim as well. So you can see here, Burncourt. This is the report they filled out. There was two things. One, that the flying column got back together the morning after, and Hogan and Morris McGrath and Tommy Ryan, they were like lunatics actually, because if they had realised, they could have captured this 8. They were quite annoyed that local intelligence hadn't told them that there was 8 RIC people on the way. Like they would have had maybe 25 to 40. They would, in their minds, that was 8 rifles that they wanted. Again, we'll go through these, but these are all activities again, and generally local, the company ones. And the first one is the destruction of property by the rebels in the Galtee Mountains, a culvert. So that's a road basically. The bridges, they're breaking up the bridges to stop the military coming out from Care, creating havoc on the top road really. And that came from Liam Lynch and the divisional. He was saying, the horses, and they were quite, with the main road, it was quite quick to get Skaheen, Burncourt and Mitchelstown, Kilbeheny. And so they were breaking up the roads, and that was the local people here that did that. And again, the second one is in March 1921. So again, they're travelling between Care and Mitchelstown and Burncourt, and there were shots fired at them. There was no casualties on that occasion. Again, 3 mass men carrying revolvers. And this is a bit more in, I suppose, a bit more land. Major Murdoch, I should say, sorry, his state, one of his agents has been warned to leave the country, that he is quite cruel to his Kilcroon. It was too strict, basically. So again, this was part of the Sinn Féin IRA. They would have taken care of him in that situation. And he basically left the country. And again, mixed patrol, the bottom one is Shambhala Demise again. Rebels again, there was no instance. It continues on through the areas. You can see here Ballypreen, Kiltankin, Burncourt. And this is it's March 1921, so the whole country is quite active at this stage. And in this particular one, 50 locals were arrested on Monday morning and searched after Mass on Sunday after IRA Constable the previous Saturday evening. So they've reacted to Cal's Cross. They're basically raiding here night and day. And after Mass, Ballypreen Barracks is attacked, which you had quite a few. The Burncourt, this is the flying column. So and Sean Hogan's columns. And this is the Kiltankin escape. I covered this previously. You would have had, obviously, Tim Mulcahy, William Cleary, and Jim Butler in it from the column. And that was quite miraculous again, and not too far from here from Kiltankin to Ballygiblin. The Gary Moore, which is a bit away from here, but had obviously serious repercussions for here. So this was in April 1921, and this is quite unusual. It was the combined 2 columns. Denny Lacey's was off. Sean Hogan's was this valley. Denny Lacey was further up towards Tipperary. So Hogan, Denny Lacey's 2 columns with Con Maloney and Dan Breen happened to be there. And they were expecting 4 trucks, military, again from surveillance. So again, they were at Garrymore Cross, and this is Hogan's on one side, and then Lacey at the other side. The 4 trucks were coming. As it happens, it was bringing goods with horses actually to Claheen. That was what it was coming. And they had actually they were heading back this route back to Burncourt when they had given up on the day, which that was quite common. They'd been there for the day waiting and nothing happened, so they'd disband. But just as they were taken back, they came along, and so the ambush happened, and they shot. I think there was 2 casualties from the British, and they got. So Hogan's continued on up through Rahill Wood, up to Burncourt. That was their retreat. Denny Lacey's stayed back to get the arms, ammunition, and as it happens, by pure coincidence, the district inspector Potter was coming back from court case in Ballypreen, and he directly drove into it. Basically, one of them recognised him, even though he was in civilian clothes, and they basically captured him. And again, that's quite well, I think, recorded, what Gilbert Potter. He basically took him and Denny Lacey's up towards, and they were actually ambushed again later on, that we met the military again over towards Newcastle. But they went up to the Comrie Mountains and hit him there. And the intent was, but going back to the Sean Hogan, so they retreated to Burncourt, and their intention was to stay in Burncourt. But at this stage, the military were raiding. They could see him on the top road. So they called on Johnny Carney in Skinrinka, and he came, and they basically took him to Skinrinka and billeted him there for the night. And literally within 45 minutes, the place was swamped with British military all around here. So again, it was quite, I suppose Johnny Carney was quite efficient, and John Casey, again, the scouting, John Tobin, Tommy Tobin, they had it fairly well tuned in. You can see here the 2 lines of troops headed to Burncourt, 3 lines of troops from the Care direction, others passing. So it was a hive of activity. And again, that saved Sean Hogan's column. And they again built it up further up to Coolagarn Row for the night. With Potter, the intent was from headquarters to quit GoPro for Thomas Traynor. He was under threat of death at Mount Joy. And again, I won't go into too much detail, but obviously that Thomas Traynor was hanged, and subsequently Potter was shot and executed in April. This had serious repercussions around here, obviously, and that now there was official reprisals in Burncourt. And this is the orders here in the 13th and the 14th of April 1921. And that's basically in the newspaper saying we're going to, this is the reason why we're doing it. This is the main detail. So there were 6 properties in the Care district, and the ones obviously known to yourselves, Tom O'Gorman, Burncourt Castle, or Mrs. Tom O'Gorman, he's in jail at this stage, Mrs. Tobin, Tincurry House, and Edmund Mulcahy at Coolagarn Row, or basically the caves. So the order was here, and the last part there is before the work of destruction commenced, notice was served on the owner of each house, telling him that his property was going to be destroyed and the reason, giving him 1 hour in which to clear out valuables and foodstuffs, hay or corn, but no furniture. And so, in effect, then they destroyed the properties. Generally by blowing up, not so much burning, but there was maybe some burning involved, but they actually went in and destroyed it, rendered them useless. So again, on this one here, this is Burncourt Castle, and this is the house at the back. And again, Rose can be a good history on this house. It's quite unique, and the architect and all that. But again, that was destroyed. The new house is built at the front, at the other side of the castle, I believe, which is like Maher's at this stage. So again, they would have got compensated, but it would have been not from the British at that stage. That would have been more when the Free State was formed. In Mulcahy's, here again, this is the house way back with Edmund and his family and the wife. This is as it's today. There's obviously John English in front of it here. That's the house as it is. You can actually still see the front door here, in effect. But again, they demolished, obviously, attached house, different state house. Obviously, John did, and the English did well. Obviously, they got with the compensation, again, they built quite a fine house. And that's, like I said, in Farrell's earlier, on Ballypreen and Carney's and the houses, when they were compensated, they built quite better houses after, subsequently. And finally, Tincurry House with Marion Tobin's. And again, you can see here, it was a fine 2-story house. This is it after the demolition. And again, this was built back up as a 1-story house. Similar format, but... so again, this was quite devastating. But the activities they kept on made, that didn't stop them here, damaging bridges in Burncourt. This is the Burncourt Creamery, and I'm not sure if you can see it, they're quite close, but this is a letterhead, which is actually quite a remarkable detail, actually. What it is from 1931, this is John Creed here, verifying that the sniper Lundigan walked in the creamery before he went on the flying column, and that's to get pension. So that's, again, this is what you get in the military archives. But again, what's really intriguing is this letterhead, Burncourt Cooperative Agriculture and Daily Society, the picture of the castle, and it's quite detailed. But of all things, this is probably the most devastating that they did locally. They closed down the creamery, as you can see here, by order from the British military for a fortnight. Well, they didn't tell them how long it was, they just closed it literally. And that was, again, basically every business in the place, the farming, it was quite devastating. But again, the local people didn't relent it, they still support it. So this is quite late in 1921, and we get to the truce. So as you can see, Burncourt, there was quite a lot of hardship. I mean, but they kept right through to the end of the struggle. And again, a truce in Burncourt, this is kind of a strange one. In July, after the truce, the IRA, this is from the RIC, they stole corrugated iron from the property of Henley Coakley, I suppose, to make dugouts, according to the IRA. So again, there wasn't much of a truce in Burncourt. Sinn Féin held courts, as I said before. This was very important from, and they held them right around the areas. And this was, again, that the administration Generally, some of the older participants of the Sinn Féin movement held the courts, but they did go through the local issues. Sometimes it was a bit quite personalised from historical things. In Burncourt, there was quite a few arrests. And again, with Thomas O'Gorman, John Creed, Jack Tobin, James Mulcahy, John Flynn, and Tim Mulcahy. So they were all arrested at different stages, and we just go through a bit of the detail. Thomas Gorman, John Creed, Jack Tobin, and Mulcahy, or quite a bit of detail. John Flynn then, and Tim Mulcahy, I think we believe was arrested in Error. That was two Tim Mulcahy's, one in Skaheen and one here. And I've heard stories from both that they meant to arrest the other one, from Skaheen one to the Burncourt and vice versa. So I'm not too sure. Thomas Gorman. So Tom was in Ballykinler camp up in County Down. And this is his signature here on the left, which also has quite a lot of prominent Republicans actually in that signature. That's the camp, typical picture of a camp. And what you see on the left is they kept themselves busy, I suppose, Ballykinler camp pilgrimage to the Lochderg principles. So they pretended they were in Lochderg for the weekend and prayed and fasted. I have a feeling it was kind of a Republican, again, they did anything just to different classes. And quite commonly at the time, they had prison books, different ones. But again, while they were learning Gaelic, Irish, and different and promising, John Creed returned back with no nails in his fingers. So it wasn't, it was a tough time. They interrogated him, and it was quite tough. This is quite an interesting letter here. The one on the left, which we'll see in the next slide, and the one on the right is he gets paroled towards the end. So bear in mind the truce has come in July. They're still in jail. This is November. He's getting truce, so that they weren't let out. But this letter on the left, and I read it. Basically, it's a letter to John Creed while he was in Ballykinler. And again, this comes from the archives. They censored the letter basically, and they found in the parcel to contain two shilling pieces in two large pats of butter. So they were getting money into him inside in the butter. They found that, and then underneath his name on the front of it, there was a letter from Nora Bergen, and that's what you see here typed out. And she describes what's happening locally, and she says Jim put down an awful time in care. I presume that's Jim Mulcahy. CB Ryan is the meeting house for Sinn Féin now. 66 is wild over it. And of course, 66 meant nothing to me until I met Maureen Creed, that is the creamy number. So they used the code, and the British note that here, that 66 is a creamy number, that they don't know who these people are. So again, they were quite ingenious in some respects. Even though they got the note, it didn't make a whole pile of sense to them. John Creed kept an autograph book, which is basically getting all your hut people to sign it, or locals as well. So this is his here, and there's different snippets. In it, there's 27 people, primarily Tip people, 10. You see Cork, Donegal, all the ways down throughout the country. And they did quite a lot of hand sketches, but these are the people that locally. Eamon Hanrahan, these were all there at the same time, more or less. And these were interned. They were just they seemed to be brought in after Rahal Barracks. Primarily they didn't catch them doing anything, they just interned them. Or basically a minute charge just to keep them locked up. And again, they sent them up to County Down, further away from home, to be disruptive. So Eamon Hanrahan here is locally is there. And they all write a poem or something. Jerry Mulvey from Ireland, Mulvey's Pub. W.J. Condon from Claheen. And Dennis McGrath and Skeen Ranko, obviously, ultimately was Burncourt Castle. And again, the sketches that they did in the jail, which is generally local sketches, that's the mountains up in County Down. And they're generally not too far away. And again, this is what the camp looked like. And on the right, his plans to escape the Ballykinler Railway. Jack Tobin of Glengar was in Burncourt again, was arrested, and he was in Kilworth camp, and this is the form sending him to Spike Island. And on the top right is the newspaper, Tobin Burncourt held in Care Barracks, 1921. So the records are there. You'd see him through the prisons that are holding him. James Mulcahy, Carrigmore and Burncourt. Again, he's gone from Cork to Spike Island. And again, he's in the newspaper that he's been held in care. The military handover. So the truth has come. They're up in Galtee Castle organising again. They're stealing corrugated iron from Coakley's to build dugouts locally. So they haven't stopped. But in the early 1922, they hand over the military barracks. First Claheen in January 25th, and then Care Military. So that's where they went, in effect. They went into the barracks to become in effect, in their minds, soldiers, and they held ranks in the barracks. There was OCs in the barracks, and they took it over and maintained it as if they were now an army. So, in Burncourt, who were the officers in charge? Uniquely, I'll be honest, in all my research, I've 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 officers, which is, I think the ones in green are the primary ones. The OC was John Pius Casey, the adjutant was Tim Mulcahy, the first lieutenant was Thomas Tobin, and the second lieutenant was William Cleary. These are the main drivers. I think the main reason, there's probably some people think it's because of the obvious thing to people, is that because of the pensions. If they had a higher rank, they got a better pension. There was certainly an element of that throughout the country. I do think it's one of the reasons I think is Burncourt was probably one of the last ones to be formed. And when you look at William Cleary's his military pension, he was getting a rank straight away when they formed. So I think the system was there at that stage. The first columns in, let's say, Tincurry might have only had 3 officers, constant. But in fairness, in Burncourt, they had them right through. So again, the names, Pius Casey, said Tim Mulcahy, Patrick Tobin, Thomas Tobin, William Cleary, Richard Peters, Jeremiah Luddy, Patrick Casey, John Casey, Patrick again Casey, and John Ryan, who's in charge of the Sergeant of the Irish Republican Police. But the main person in charge is Pius Casey. He's the officer commanding. And in Skeenrinka, that would have been J.J. Carney. In Cumann, and again, it's probably, some of the histories has not been fair to this, but probably recent times a bit better. But Cumann were as active as the Volunteers itself. And when you go back reading what they wrote to get the pensions in 1940, they acknowledged that every single time, every one of them, that it would not have happened without the Cumann. Primarily for the food, for the soil, when they were in prison, they were the ones that kept all that together. And they kept, you can imagine all the men gone out of the locality, they kept the farms going, they kept the businesses going. In Burncourt, the captain, which is the same as the OC, was Joanna Butler. The secretary was Margaret Casey, and the treasurer, Ellen Luddy, who subsequently married Carrigan. And sorry, Joanna Butler subsequently married Jack Ryan. So again, they were there constant throughout. The Sinn Féin officers, this would have been a bit earlier, 1914 to 1919. And you can see from the bottom they're listed as James Slattery in Burncourt, Jack Butler Burncourt, and Timothy Dowling, secretary. These were generally a bit older. Certainly John and James and John, because they were there from the early days, really. So in the very first picture I showed you in 1914, it's highly likely it's one of them standing in front. Who passed through here? Burncourt, obviously, the foot of the Galties. The Galties was notorious for going from Cork to Dublin. And in different books or records, you find Damon de Valera, Ernie O'Malley, who spent quite a lot of time here, to be honest. He was with Tincurry House in Burncourt, and he was the main person from headquarters that was around this area. And Richard Mulcahy likewise came down to there to review the whole area. Tipperary, the obvious ones, Sean Tracy, Denny Lacey, Dan Breen, they were, and Seamus Robinson likewise. The Cork, you get Tom Barry, David Kent from Benard, Castlelyons, and Liam Lynch, again regularly coming through this area. It was a safe area, in their minds it was a safe area. Liam Deasy in Cork, and then Austin Stack and Kerry. So at different stages you see these names appearing, or they're scouting for them while they went through. So the Burncourt company would have to mind them as they get through the area. That was their job. This is probably the toughest part in the research, the dugouts and the arms dumps. There's notice of one in dugout and arms dump in Glengara, in Burtlows and two or more. Now there's no sign of it there at this stage. Generally the arms dump in a field where, like this, I suppose in a corner, which unfortunately we've all had to pick stones at different stages in a rural community, and you throw them into one corner in a big field. What they did was, the arms weren't that big, they were quite small, they were for revolvers or rifles, but they would have a sheet of galvanised, and every field had that, so they didn't necessarily suspect that, so that's where a lot of the dumps were, or within houses in different places. This dugout is in Coolagar Road, and it's, this is from the Black Road up around Highlands, and Leonard's are looking across, and this is Fox's Road or Capes' Road, and this is O'Gorman's field at the moment. And this little tree here, you can see the wood. You go in here, and inside here there's a culvert. Maybe it's a stream. I spent it. Philip O'Gorman told me where it was exactly. I spent 2 days up there, got nowhere near it. I'd be still there. You go down a stream, you would never. It's down the stream the height of this, and you climb up a bank, and they've cut into the side of it. and it at least holds 25 people. They would have put dugouts over it. Sorry, it was a dugout, but they didn't have arms there. They'd put stream and corrugated, and that's where they stayed. So when, for example, in the Cahill's Cross, when they got that warning, they would have gone here because they had expected raids. That's where they went. When they're up the Black Road at Kiley's and they got a warning that there was military coming from Care on horseback, that's where they would have gone. There would be something similar in Burncourt as well. I'm just not quite sure where it is, and if anyone knows, I'd be more than delighted to take a visit. But this is quite impressive. It's maybe, I suppose, a quarter the size of this room, but it's a lot of effort. That's dug into the side of the mountain. Again, arms found. This is found in McGrath's house in Coolantala, hidden behind a cupboard. Now, the one on the top right is the one they found. On the left, that's what it looks like in pristine condition. So there's quite a lot of arms. They never actually give up the arms. They're still around in different places. The Burncourt volunteer stats. This is all the townlands, and we'll see this in the presentation now in a second, everyone that's involved. The one thing of note, the total is 69 IRA males, basically, and 7 coming them on, the female. The one thing I do know is that there's 16 coming them on in Burncourt. So I'd love to find out and the rest of them. For some reason, the roles weren't done in Burncourt at the pension time. So we have them all for Skaheen, Clyne, all other areas, but Burncourt, we have the officers, but not the rest. I've managed to get to 7, quite comfortable. And it's generally fair to say they were generally the families, brothers and sisters were all coming them on. So if you know of it yourself, please let me know after. Even though there's 69 IRA, there's about 30 hardcore, really, to be honest, that are really active. So there was one, they'd been there in 1914 for the volunteers. So I've been quite inclusive. But of the 30 would have been primarily involved. I wouldn't say full-time, but they would have been at different activities. This is a map showing the home locations. This is a remarkable piece of work, really. I'd love to take credit for it, but I'm afraid I can't. It's actually Rose Cleary's good work when I was looking for help in this. Being from Ballyporeen, obviously, Burncourt, you hear Englishes, McGraths, Tobins, Portlows, the same names, and trying to distinguish who's what and where is no easy task. This is a work in itself, I'll be honest, of historical importance. So what you're going to see in the slides coming up after another song, but what you'll see is the people where they were in the time of the Troubles, 1921, 1920, the early 1920s, not where they were in 1940 or subsequently now. So some of the names might seem a bit strange to you. You might say, hang on, that's not where they are. For example, the sniper Lundin, he should be in Glengar, but he was actually from Raheen. Likewise, you'll see Skaheen people that, it depends on where they worked. There was Thomas English up in Paula Valla. He worked in Kedra, the other side of Care, so he was, even though he's from the Burncourt company, his main activity was with the company where he was. And that happened quite a bit. So it takes a bit of work to get this. This is what, this will be up online. Seamus will do a job after the whole presentation. And that's certainly worth looking at. It's quite a historical. So again, I have to thank Rose for that. And again, basically what you see all these boxes is all the names where they were back then. And I think with the help of John Cagney and a few other people, she's put this together. So again, thanks for that. Sorry, I suppose the one thing I probably should say about that is, as Rose pointed out to me, you can see the names concentrate up around the foot of the galleys. And this goes back to, I think Rose has talked previously, in the 1870s, where they moved, in effect, it was a policy, an agricultural policy, where they moved the farmers up to smaller lots with lesser rent. And again, obviously that would have led to land agitation. But again, when you look at this and put dots there, you can see this reflects that. So they were more active in the land agitation, hence they were more active in the republicanism. And that's kind of repeated throughout the valley here, from here to Ireland to Kilbenny. You see that happening quite a bit. And that was a policy on the estates. And in effect, this map goes to prove that. Excuse me. I suppose the one thing when I was doing this as well that amazes me really, and in some respects the acting is great. It's excellently well done, but as I always realised, they're actually too old. And that's not a good compliment. I was doing it myself in a previous one, and they were like in 50s, but really they were half my age, all of them. In 1914, the average age of the male was 18 that was involved, and the female was 19, a year older. So when they were marching up and down the streets in defiance, they were 18, 19, and at the height of it, in 1921, they were 25 and 26, and that's taken from all of them. So sometimes you get, like John Slattery in there, who'll be in his 40s, But so you can imagine to get that average age, they were quite young. And to finish up on this part of it, there's some pictures. This is Sean Hogan's column, typical with the arms. Again, this picture has some of it's obviously the truest times, really. You see at the back here, Chris Conway, Jack Ryan, and Maurice McGrath. And amongst all the other officers, the Mahonys, the names that you expect to see, the Miles, the Gormans. So in effect, even though it says that these are Tipperary Brigade, they're actually in effect Sean Hogan's column. Nearly every one of them were involved in the column at some stage. And obviously more, but these were the officers. Again, this is probably the most famous picture of all the flying columns, really. You see it in T-shirts, you see it in books, you see it in movies, everywhere and anywhere, and different versions of it. But the names are all known in this one. The ones that are, I suppose, relevant to ourselves here, Sean Hogan on the left standing, behind him, Ned Mulcahy, Dave Fitzgerald here again, the ones I've beside him, Gabriel McGrath, second from the front here on the left, Maurice McGrath at the back here, and Bill Mulcahy. Now, obviously, there was others, William Cleary, they weren't all there, and there's probably a training camp more than likely. There's quite a lot of pictures around locally of the in Tipperary. And the last picture is probably the best picture of all in Burncourt. Maurice McGrath on the left, Jackie Tobin with the big hat there. Well, they were all the big hats, I was smiling away. And with the cigarette, then it's the Sniper Lund again. I'm not too sure who's on the left here. So if anyone knows, I'm happy to know. But again, that's taken, we believe, in Burncourt. And so again, that's the first section now. I think we'll have a song now. So that's 1914 to 1921. So what's left really is we'll have a song, and then we'll basically show you all the people that were involved by Townlands. Okay? So I'll hand you over.
No, we're not going to put it on. When it is
much, Lisa and Siobhan. This is probably the last part from myself, which is the Townlands. So in effect, it's the Burncourt men and women who are members of the Irish Volunteers, Cumann na mBan, and the Irish Republican Army. Just a few points of note, I suppose, really, as I said, from Rose's map, you'll see it's where they were back then, where they lived, where they farmed, and where they were active from, what houses they're in as safe houses, whether they were given help or not. Some of the people in Burncourt basically were in the company in Skaheen. That's the nature of it, because they worked there, vice versa. So you'll see people in here with in brackets after it, Skaheen Rinka company or an Carty company. That's where they were. That's where they were active. But they might have spent most of their life here. And again, you'll see, as I was saying, the Lundigan up in Raheen. You'll see the Butlers in two areas, even though they're all from Ballyhurrow. But at that stage, they had somewhere in Toomore, somewhere in Ballyhurrow. So I've tried to keep it as historically accurate as possible. I'm sure I've made a few blunders in there. I'm sure I'd like to point them out after, and we can correct it. The nature of this thing is this is photographs related. And after the show, you tend to get more pictures. Certainly bring them on, because Seamus hates this, but I can put him in afterwards, no great hassle, in the next number of weeks, just to make it more accurate. And I'm interested in that, make it, reflect the true thing. The one thing about these coming up, these are all your people, basically. It's like looking down the hall. You're looking at yourselves up here. Most of these names are still here. Some will surprise you. Some are probably gone. Not forgotten, but they're gone. Not in the area anymore. But these are your, in some cases, maybe parents, your grandparents, your cousins, your relations. So these are the people of Burncourt. And accompanied by the wonderful Bobby Gardner, I'd imagine. Yeah, a nice slow air. No better man.
So I think that's it for myself, more or less. I think we'll have a song after, which is going to keep playing again. But, so I suppose it's fascinating watching the audience there behind here, the silence, and thanks Bobby for the music and the gardeners. It's actually like as if my relatives up here, to be honest, looking down at G, looking up here, transfixed by it. That's what makes it. And I think it's important that I'd like to finish this actually. It's like a family tree, it's never finished. I'd like pictures or something. You see photographs, you see headstones, you see quite a few people that went to America, that's the shipping record when they went, or just get some document to represent all of them. I suppose I just like to, thanking is always a dangerous game, as my father always told me, but I'll go for it anyway. I'd like to thank all the people, in fact I'm thanking everyone in the hall really, but I'd like to thank the Englishes, the O'Donohues, the Foxes, the Butlers, McGraths, Morans, Creeds, Connellys, Slatterys, O'Gormans, Mulcahy's, Cardinals, Carneys and the Gardeners. A few people like to thank specifically my brother John here. Like me, you probably don't know who he is at this stage. He's left a long time ago. He's been busy. I'd like to thank Eamon for not being here. He's at a car thing in Italy, which is surprising and shocking to all of you. But in fairness, I have played in the last number of months with numbers and names. You know this person, you know that person. He must have a number. So he's been, and likewise with Tomas, we believe his number somewhere. They've been a great help. I'd like to thank Seamus Hennessy. Again, first class as always. Seamus will be recording this. We'll put this up on YouTube. And again, it does a few extra bits, primarily the pictures. Please contact me after. I don't think we'll have time for questions and answers. I think we'll have time to go home. I'd like to thank the Burncourt drama group and singers. In fairness, I'd like to list them all out actually, to be honest. Evelyn Meany, Willie Walsh, Jimmy McGrath, Tom Quirk, John Carney, Hopper McGrath, Jane Crotty, Therese English, Siobhan Hurley, Max Carroll, Mary O'Brien, Bridget O'Gorman, Joanna Butler, Jack Tobin. Sorry, that's the people, apologies. I should know at this stage anyway. I'd like to thank them as well, by the way. And as well, Shawnee Crowley, we'll have to thank Shawnee Crowley. The one thing, I came down about 2 weeks ago to see the rehearsals, and I have to say, I went back up to Dublin afterwards. I was saying, I wish I could act. That's the crack they were having. I mean, it was not sure, but the acting was excellent, but they just had a great crack. And I wish I could act. I'd actually certainly, so I'd recommend joining. They were certainly a great group. And a few specifics, I'd like to thank Breda Fitzgerald for getting in contact and the Burncourt Community Council for making it happen, basically. Again, thank them, and they got the funding, did all the hard work. And a few specific people as well I'd like to thank. David Slattery, I suppose for giving me the lie of the land, particularly this side of the country. I got it in great detail from David, so thanks very much. Rose Cleary for the knowledge and the map. I mean, it's a remarkable piece of work, and just the knowledge and the interest. And Lisa for the talk earlier as well in the year, that was a great help. And Johnny Butler, I can't see Johnny what he's done, that's somewhere I'm sure. Again, I suppose like Rose, the knowledge and just a phenomenal interest to have in the history of the place, really. It's they're quite lucky, really, to be honest with you. And they've been absolutely immense help. So again, I suppose the last people I'd like to thank is the men and women of Burncourt, really, and the volunteers for making us, give us what we have today. So thanks very much.
I want to say an absolute huge thank you to Neil Donovan. It has been one of the most compelling and engaging talks that I have heard in a long, long time. His research, it was such a comprehensive talk, but it was so, so relevant, and I'm sure it had a huge meaning for a lot of you here in this audience. And I want to say a huge thank you to him, and a huge boule boss for Neil, please. I'd like to thank the Gardner family and Bobby. Just Bobby is here again with us. The drama group, of course, who are my second family, if possibly my first family sometimes, I suppose. Functional, dysfunctional family, yeah, definitely that.
Children is the word you're looking for.
Children, oh yeah, thank you, Thomas. Thanks, Thomas, yeah. Like to thank John Donovan. I think he was spectacular here today. The amount of work he did, getting all this in place and putting up the screens, even though one fell down, and everything. He was absolutely brilliant today here. Big bull boss, John. And of course, Seamus Hennessy for all his work and his professionalism. Volunteered who helped out in the way. We've young Ollie in there helping, making the tea for you. And again, at the end of it all, we wish Shawnee a speedy recovery. We need him back here with us. And we're just going to do 2 songs now and a little poem at the end. So thank you all very, very much. And, sorry, I must say thanks to Tipperary County Council, just in case any one of them is in the audience. Okay, thanks.
I'd just like to say that this Shawnee was supposed to be singing this song.
Yes.
He's texting me at the moment, he's fine.
I joined the flying column in 1916 in Cork with Sean Moylan, Tipperary with and Breen, arrested by free staters and sentenced for to die. Farewell to Tipperary, said the Gatti mountain wide. We went across the valleys and over the hilltops green, where we met with Danny Lacey, John Hogan and Breen, Sean Moylan and his gallant men, they kept the flag flying high. Farewell to Tipperary, said the Gatti mountain boy. We trekked the Wicklow mountains, we were rebels on the run. Though haunted night and morning, we were outlaws but free men. We roamed the Dublin mountains as the sun was shining high. Farewell to Tipperary, said the Gatti mountain boy. I'll bid farewell to old Clonmel that I never more will see, and to the Gatti mountains that oft times sheltered me, to the men who fought for their
You all right? Sorry.
Sorry, just I forgot one thing actually. Meant to say, Skeen Rinka is next to finish off the Galway Valley, maybe before Christmas or the New Year. So the Carneys, John English, all these people, just beware. I'll be knocking on your doorstep soon to get the same information. Thanks very much.
I was born on a Dublin street where the loyal drums did beat, and all the loving English feet they tramped all over us. And each and every night when me dad would come home tight, he'd invite the neighbours out with this fine chorus. Oh, now you black and tan, come out and fight me like a man. Tell us how you slew them poor Arabs 2 by 2. Like the Zulus they had spears and bow and arrows. Oh, how bravely you faced one with your 16 pounder gun, and you frightened them poor natives to their mouths. Come out you black and tan, come out and fight me like a man. Your life for you and fellas down in Flanders. Tell them how the IRA let us hear you tell how you slandered great Parnell, when you taught him well and truly persecuted. Where are the smears and jeers that you bravely let us hear when our leaders of 16 were executed? Fight me like a man. I fight for you and medals down in Flanders, and how the IRA made you run like hell away from the green and lovely lanes of Killashandra. Oh, the day is coming fast, and the time is here at last, when each yeoman will be cast aside before us. And if there be a need, sure my kids will sing Godspeed, and they sing the verse of 2 of Field's chorus. Come out, you black and tan, come out and fight me like a man. Your life will you and medals down in Flanders, and how the IRA made you run like hell away from the green and lovely lanes of Killashandra. Come out, you black and tan, come out and fight me like a man. Your life will you and medals down in Flanders, and how the IRA made you run like hell away from the green and lovely lanes of Killashandra.
We're going to conclude with a short poem. It's We Saw a Vision by Liam McIshton. And this you will know, some of you who have been in Kilmainham, or not Kilmainham, but in the Garden of Remembrance, that this is engraved there. It's also on our 1916 stone outside, some of it. Okay, Maureen.
In the darkness of despair we saw a vision.
We lit the light of hope and it was not extinguished.
In the desert of discouragement we saw a vision.
We planted the tree of valor and it blossomed.
In the winter of bondage we saw a vision.
We melted the snow of lethargy and the river of resurrection flowed from it.
We sent our vision a swim like a swan on the river.
The vision became a reality. Winter became summer. Bondage became freedom.
And this we left to you as your inheritance.
O generations of freedom, remember us, the generation of the vision.